Have you ever apologized for something, even though you didn't actually know what you did wrong? Maybe you felt that familiar knot of anxiety, that deep, unsettling need to make things right. Even if there was no specific action you could point to, that feeling wasn't logic. It wasn't responsibility. It was conditioning. Guilt is one of the most fundamental, yet most misunderstood emotions we experience. We're taught from a young age that guilt means we have done something wrong, that it is a signal of a moral failing that needs correction. But psychology tells a far more complicated story. Sometimes guilt appears not because you made a mistake, but because your brain has learned, through years of experience, that peace and safety depend entirely on your compliance and your willingness to quickly take the blame. Today, we are going to break down why this kind of guilt shows up without reason, how your brain creates it as a defense mechanism, and why some people are dramatically more susceptible to this feeling than others. Let's start with a foundational question. What exactly is guilt? At its core, guilt is a social emotion. It evolved to keep humans connected to the group. If you think back to early human societies, being rejected or exiled meant almost certain danger, if not death. So the human brain developed a sophisticated internal warning system, guilt, to monitor and regulate behavior, ensuring you stayed within the social boundaries. Guilt's primal message is clear. Fix this error, repair the breach, or risk losing connection. This is vital for maintaining healthy relationships. But here is the critical problem, the hinge upon which baseless guilt pivots. The brain doesn't care if the threat of disconnection is real. It only cares if the feeling of the threat is real. If your environment consistently signaled that disagreement, friction, or even your own self-assertion could lead to emotional withdrawal or conflict, your brain began activating the guilt mechanism preemptively. It anticipates the rejection and pressures you to apologize, fix, or smooth things over before any real wrongdoing has occurred. This is how the feeling of guilt can activate instantly, even when absolutely no moral or behavioral error has taken place. Now, not everyone experiences this internal push-pull in the same way. While we all have the capacity for guilt, the intensity varies wildly. Psychology shows that excessive, unjustified guilt is often stronger in people who share specific traits. These individuals are often highly empathetic, meaning they feel the emotions of others acutely. They are frequently conflict avoidant, meaning they prioritize harmony over addressing friction. They may also be hyper-emotionally aware, meaning they are constantly scanning the environment for signs of distress. But most importantly, these individuals were often conditioned early on to maintain harmony at all costs. If, while growing up, you learned that even small amounts of tension, whether it was a parent's sigh, a sudden shift in mood, or overt punishment, would lead to painful emotional distance or withdrawal, your brain made an adaptive choice. It essentially learned, my survival hinges on preventing tension. I must fix discomfort fast, regardless of the source. Guilt. It's the instant panic button that makes you move toward compliance. Your nervous system prioritizes returning the environment to equilibrium over validating your own perspective or truth. This conditioning rarely comes from a single, dramatic moment. It's built on repetition. Think about the cumulative impact of being repeatedly expected to be the bigger person, to keep the peace, to stay quiet during conflict, or to be the first one to apologize, even when the situation was ambiguous, Each time you complied, a powerful neural pathway was reinforced, Your brain connected relief, safety, and reconnection with compliance, silence, and self-blame. Eventually, guilt becomes automatic. It appears not because you actually did something wrong, but because your system has been trained to associate interpersonal discomfort with personal danger. This is why unjustified guilt can feel intensely physical. You might experience a tight chest, a flutter in your stomach, or a sudden, overwhelming urgency. Your nervous system is reacting to the conditioned threat before your logical mind even has a chance to process the facts. It's an unconscious, emotional reflex honed over years. This brings us to a slightly darker, more uncomfortable truth: how this sensitivity to guilt is sometimes unconsciously used against us. People who are close to you, and I want to emphasize that this is often unintentional, may recognize your intense sensitivity to guilt. They know that if they express emotional distress, you will immediately step in to fix it. They don't have to accuse you directly. They simply need to sigh deeply. They might withdraw silently, but they may act overtly disappointed or subtly freeze you out. It's because your conditioning dictates that you must restore harmony. Your brain fills in the rest of the narrative. Even if they haven't said a word, you immediately jump to action. You apologize profusely. You explain. You beg for clarity. You overcorrect your behavior. You take on their emotional state as your own burden. This dynamic doesn't always signal conscious manipulation, but the result is the same. You end up taking responsibility for emotions, moods, teas, and relationships that are fundamentally not yours to control. You are apologizing for their bad day, their disappointment, or their general stress, simply because their feelings triggered your conditioned panic response. So, how do we break this cycle? The key is learning to distinguish between guilt and responsibility, because they are absolutely not the same thing. True responsibility is clear, it is specific, and it is grounded in a defined action you took. If you forgot an appointment, you are responsible. If you said something unkind, you are responsible. True guilt is productive because it motivates repair. Conditioned, toxic guilt, however, is vague, is overwhelming, it is emotional, and it is often undefined. Feels like a fog of self-blame that permeates everything. A single, powerful question is the tool that breaks the cycle of conditioning whenever that familiar wave of undefined guilt washes over you. Stop and ask yourself clearly, what exactly did I do wrong? Be forensic. Look for a verifiable action, a clear boundary crossed, or a specific mistake. If the answer is unclear, fuzzy, or if you find yourself saying, I guess I just made them feel bad, that sinking feeling is not information, it is conditioning, denoting that distinction that this feeling is an old reflex, not a current moral failing, changes everything. Feeling guilt does not mean you are wrong. It means you are human, and you possess an evolved system that values connection. But you are not responsible for every single emotion around you. You are not required to manage the emotional climate for everyone you encounter. The moment you stop reacting automatically to that surge of anxiety, the moment you pause and demand clarity, that old toxic guilt loses its authority over you. Understanding this isn't about becoming cold or detached, it is about becoming clear, and clarity is the ultimate freedom. Thank you for joining me for this deep dive, and I hope this gives you a new lens through which to view your emotional landscape.